There is a machine in Montana so massive that it can farm 3 acres of dirt in a single minute. It weighs more than a fully loaded semi-truck. It stands taller than a 2-story house. It burns 1,000 gallons of fuel. And it was built to do the work of 2 bulldozers at once. But here's the part that'll mess with your head. This 135,000-pound monster, the single largest farm tractor ever built, was taken down, not by a bigger machine, not by rust, not by time. It was killed by a tire company going bankrupt. Bill? One company folds in an office you've never heard of, and the world's largest tractor just stops. Frozen, dead in a field, for almost a decade. How does a tire bankruptcy take down a machine this powerful? Stick with me, because the way they finally brought it back to life is even crazier than the way it died. Let's get into it. Okay, first you need to understand what we're actually looking at, because photos lie to you. When you see a picture of this thing, your brain does the math wrong. It goes, that's a tractor. Tractors are big, cool. No, stop. Your brain is undercounting. This is the Big Bud 16V747, and the numbers are borderline ridiculous. It's 27 feet long, over 25 feet wide, and 14 feet tall to the top of the cab. That means if you parked it in a normal suburban garage, it wouldn't just fail to fit. The tires alone would be too tall to get through the door. Each one of those original tires stood 8 feet tall. 8 feet. You could not touch the top of one standing on the ground. You'd need a ladder just to slap the top of the wheel. And now the number that breaks people. That engine, 1,100 horsepower. Let me put that in a language you actually feel. A typical family SUV makes around 200 horsepower. This tractor makes the equivalent of 5 or 6 of them, bolted together, screaming through a 16-cylinder Detroit diesel engine into a machine designed to drag steel through the earth all day and never get tired. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Big Bud wasn't built to be a world record. It wasn't built to go viral. It wasn't built for a museum. It was built to solve one very specific, very expensive problem out in California. And to understand that problem, we have to go back to 1977, which is where this story gets interesting. Because the reason this beast exists at all? 2 brothers were losing a war against their own farmland. Hang on to that. We're going there next. Picture Bakersfield, California in the 1970s. Cotton country. Endless flat rows baking under the sun. And out there, farming a 20,000-acre operation, were the Rossi brothers, Elmer and Melvin. Serious farmers. The kind who measured land not in acres, but in square miles. And they had a problem that money couldn't easily fix. To grow good cotton, you have to rip the soil deep, break up the hard-packed earth far below the surface so roots can breathe and water can sink in. And to do that on land that size, the Rossis were running a pair of Caterpillar D9 bulldozers. Dilsne yo ditasum, pickle coal on the sea to ace. Now, a D9 is a beast in its own right. 2 of them? That should be overkill. But here's the twist. Bulldozers are slow. They crawl. They're tanks, not sprinters. On a farm the size of a small city, slow doesn't just cost time, it costs a fortune. 2 machines, 2 operators, 2 fuel bills, crawling across 20,000 acres. So the Rossis had a wild idea. What if you didn't need 2 slow crawlers? What if you built one machine so powerful it could do the work of both, but on rubber tires, so it could actually move? The problem? No such machine existed. Nobody made a tractor that big. It wasn't on a shelf. It wasn't in a catalog. You couldn't buy it for any amount of money, so they didn't buy one. They went to a little company in Havre, Montana, Northern Manufacturing, and they asked a question that most engineers would have laughed at. Can you just build us the biggest tractor in the world? And a man named Ron Harmon and his crew looked at that request and said yes. Now stay with me, because what they built didn't just meet the assignment, it shattered it. And the name they gave it tells you exactly how big their ambition was. The build cost around $300,000 in 1977 money. Adjust that for inflation and you're talking well over $1 million for a single custom tractor. One, off the assembly line of no assembly line. Everything on it had to be invented. The frame, the drivetrain, the hydraulics. There was no parts store for a machine this size, because a machine this size had never existed. Every bolt, every axle, every system was custom. And when they needed a name for it, They looked at the biggest, most jaw-dropping machine they could think of. Not a truck, not a train. They looked at the Boeing 747, the jumbo jet. The plane's so huge that when it first flew, people genuinely didn't believe something that heavy could get off the ground. That's the energy they wanted. So they called it the 16V747. The 16V for its 16-cylinder engine, the 747 for the jet it was named to honor. A tractor named after a jumbo jet. Let that sink in. And here's a detail that shows just how smart these Montana builders actually were. The entire engine and transmission were built into a single removable unit they nicknamed the Gen Pack. Why does that matter? Because on a normal machine, an engine repair means days of work. On Big Bud, if something went wrong, they could unbolt the entire powertrain and swap it out in under 4 hours. Think about that, a machine this enormous, this complex, and you could yank its heart out and drop in a new one before lunch. That single design choice is exactly why Big Bud is still alive today, decades later, when nearly every other one-off mega machine has been scrapped. Remember that. It comes back at the end. So they finished it, they shipped it to California, and Big Bud went to war. And what happened in those fields? It was almost unfair. They dropped Big Bud onto the Rossi farm, hooked it up, and turned it loose. And it didn't replace those 2 bulldozers. It humiliated them. Big Bud could do the work of both Caterpillar D9s at higher speed, on rubber, covering ground the crawlers could only dream of. Where the bulldozers crept, Big Bud rolled. At full tilt, dragging an 80-foot wide implement behind it. This tractor can turn over roughly 3 acres of soil every single minute. 3 acres a minute. To visualize that, an American football field from end zone to end zone is about 1 1/3 acres. So Big Bud is chewing through more than 2 football fields of dirt every 60 seconds all day without slipping. And that without slipping part is not a small thing. When you put over 1,000 horsepower into the ground, most machines just spin their wheels, burning rubber, going nowhere. But Big Bud's sheer weight pressed those 8-foot tires into the earth so hard that all that power actually went somewhere. It didn't spin, it pulled. The Rossi brothers ran it for 11 years. 11. That's not a stunt or a demo. That's more than a decade of a one-of-a-kind experimental giant showing up and doing brutal work day after day and just not breaking. Then, when the Rossis were done with it, Big Bud didn't retire. It moved on. It went to Florida, to a place called Willowbrook Farms, and kept ripping soil there too. And then, in 1997, Big Bud came home. 2 brothers from Big Sandy, Montana, Robert and Randy Williams, bought the world's largest tractor and brought it back to the state where it was born. They didn't want a trophy. They wanted a worker. So they put it back in the field. They even cranked its horsepower up. Everything was perfect. The giant was alive. It was working, it was home. And that is exactly when the clock started ticking on the strangest death in tractor history. Because 800 miles away, in an office nobody on that farm had ever visited, a company was about to go under. And when it did, it would take the world's largest tractor down with it. Here's the thing about building the biggest machine in the world. Everything on it has to be custom, and I mean everything. The frame, custom. The engine mounts, custom. The hydraulics, custom. And the tires? The tires were the most custom part of all. Because Big Bud's tires weren't just big. They were 8 feet tall, larger than any farm tire that existed on the open market. You could not order them. You could not walk into a shop and buy a set. There was exactly one place on earth that made them. A single company, United Tire Company of Canada. Now stop and think about how fragile that actually is. The most powerful farm tractor ever built, 135,000 pounds of American engineering, 1,100 horsepower, a machine that eats bulldozers for breakfast, was completely dependent on one company in another country to make the only tires that could hold it up. One company. As long as United Tire kept making them, Big Bud was unstoppable. But that's the trap of being one of a kind. When you're the only machine of your size in the world, you're also the only customer. And a tire that fits only one tractor on the entire planet is not exactly a hot seller. So here's the question that should be making your stomach drop. What happens to the world's largest tractor when the only company that can make its tires goes out of business? In the year 2000, United Tire Company of Canada went bankrupt. And just like that, Every original Big Bud tire in existence became irreplaceable. Not expensive, not hard to find, impossible. The factory was gone, the molds were gone. The tooling that shaped those 8-foot giants, gone. Every tire still rolling on Big Bud was now a countdown timer because rubber doesn't last forever. Tires wear, tires crack, tires fail. And when one of Big Bud's tires finally failed, there would be nothing on earth to replace it. The Williams brothers knew it. Every time they took that machine into the field, they were rolling on borrowed time, riding on a set of tires that could never ever be replaced. And then, in 2009, it happened. One of the tires took damage. Damage bad enough that the tire was done. And that was it. There was no replacement. There was no phone number to call. There was no factory to beg. The only company that had ever made that tire had been dead for nearly a decade. So the world's largest tractor, a machine that could farm 3 acres a minute, that had outworked bulldozers for over 30 years, that had crossed the country from California to Florida to Montana, went quiet. Not because its engine failed. That engine was fine. That legendary 16-cylinder heart could still roar. Not because it broke. The frame, the drivetrain, the gen pack, all fine. It died because it had nothing to stand on. Think about how insane that is. It's like a world champion sprinter in peak condition, at the top of their game, who can never race again because nobody makes shoes in their size anymore. The athlete is perfect. The talent is there. But without the one small thing at the very bottom, none of it matters. The most powerful farm tractor ever built was defeated by the one part everybody takes for granted. So they loaded it up, and Big Bud went to a museum in Clarion, Iowa. And there it sat, behind ropes, under lights, a giant reduced to a photo backdrop. People would walk up, crane their necks, take a picture of the monster, and then walk away, never having heard it run. For 8 years, the world's largest tractor sat frozen, perfectly capable of moving mountains of dirt and completely unable to move an inch. And it might have stayed that way forever. A dead legend in a quiet building. Except one man, standing in that museum, refused to accept it. And the plan he came up with to bring Big Bud back was so ambitious that most people told him it couldn't be done. Here's how they pulled it off. The problem was simple to say and nearly impossible to solve. You cannot run Big Bud without tires. Nobody makes Big Bud's tires. The company that did is dead. So either you invent a solution or the world's largest tractor stays a statue forever. The Williams brothers weren't willing to let it die, so they started making calls. And those calls eventually reached a tire dealer, and that dealer reached a man named Scott Sloan at a company called Titan International, a maker of Goodyear farm tires. And when Scott heard the problem, he didn't think small. He thought exactly like the Montana builders who made Big Bud in the first place. His logic was beautiful. It's the world's largest tractor, so it has to wear the world's largest tires. Titan made a monster of a tire called the LSW 1400, one of the largest agricultural tires on the planet. And Scott's idea was to put not 2, not 4, but 8 of them on Big Bud in a double-stacked configuration. But, and here's the catch that nearly killed the whole plan, those modern tires didn't fit. The bolt patterns were wrong. The spacing was wrong. You couldn't just roll them up and slap them on. The whole wheel setup had to be custom engineered to marry a 1970s giant to 21st century rubber. So they did it. They brought in a wheel shop, they fabricated custom rims, they built the assemblies from scratch, and on a single day they tore into the giant, pulled off the ruined originals, one of which was, in their own words, beyond any hope of repair, and mounted 8 brand new tires that could finally hold Big Bud's weight. And then came the moment everyone was waiting for. They climbed into the cab, they hit the starter, and that 16-cylinder Detroit diesel, silent for years, came back to life. The engine roared, the tires bit, and the world's largest tractor, dead for the better part of a decade, rolled forward under its own power for the first time in years. They were so hyped that they weren't going to stop at photos. They got a police escort and drove the giant straight through downtown Clarion, Iowa, a 135,000-pound legend cruising down Main Street, resurrected. The two brothers who'd owned it, who'd watched it go silent, who'd refused to give up on it. Witnesses said the way they smiled in that moment was priceless. But the story doesn't end on that street, because Big Bud still had one thing left to do. It had to go home. They hauled Big Bud back to Montana, back to Big Sandy, back to the exact kind of wide open ground it was born to conquer. And in September of 2020, they hooked it up to an 80-foot wide chisel plow, a piece of equipment so enormous that pulling it is by itself an absurd ask for any machine on Earth. Then they opened Big Bud up, full throttle, 9 miles an hour, dragging 80 feet of steel through Montana dirt. And here's the detail that gives me chills every time. The owner said that when they let it loose, pulling that colossal plow at speed, the tractor didn't act like it was straining. It didn't slip, it didn't fight, it moved through the earth like the plow behind it wasn't even there. He said it was almost like Big Bud was just happy to be back. Think about the full arc of that. Built in 1977 to outmuscle 2 bulldozers, ran for 11 years in California, crossed the country, came home to Montana, then killed, not by any rival, not by any bigger machine, but by a bankruptcy in an office it never saw. Frozen in a museum for 8 years, a giant behind velvet rope, and then dragged back to life by people who simply refused to let a legend die and who had to reinvent the wheel, literally, to do it. That machine is back in the dirt right now, doing the exact job it was born to do half a century later. And remember that Genpack, the removable heart that could be swapped in 4 hours? Remember when I said it would matter? This is why Big Bud is still here when almost every other one-off mega machine got cut up for scrap. It was built from the very beginning to be kept alive. The people in Havre, Montana didn't just build the biggest tractor in the world in 1977. They accidentally built the most revivable one, a machine practically designed to survive its own death. So here's what Big Bud actually teaches you, and it's not about horsepower. You can be the biggest, the strongest, the most powerful thing that has ever existed in your entire field. And you can still be brought to a complete standstill by the smallest, most overlooked part of the whole system. A part you never worried about, made by someone you never met, in a place you'll never go. The giant wasn't killed by something bigger than itself. It was killed by something smaller. By a single point of failure nobody thought to protect. But it was saved by the exact opposite of that. By a handful of stubborn people who looked at a dead legend behind museum ropes and said, no, not like this. The world's largest tractor is alive again. It's out there in Montana right now, ripping through soil like the last 50 years never happened. If this story hit you the way it hit me the first time I heard it, do me a favor and stick around. There are more machines like this, impossible builds, giants that never should have existed, legends that came back from the dead, and I'm telling every single one of their stories on this channel. You already know what to do if you don't want to miss the next one. I'm out. See you at the next giant.